Andrew Friedman joins us now to talk more about why the new climate rules are so important. He's the principal at the Washington Update. So, Andy, based on our reporting there's no question that this is a very controversial issue. But aside from that, will this new rule solve the problem?
Well, I think that's a great question, Susie. I mean, if you believe climate change is an issue, then you need to cut greenhouse gas emissions. But all this rule does, because it's really all the administration could do, is cut emission from power plants, which is about 40% of total carbon emissions. And of course, it doesn't address what happens overseas. We don't have fences at our borders that keep our air here. At some point, our cleaner air ends up over China, and their dirtier air ends up here. So it's a start, but whether it really does enough, I think, is open to question.
Andy, what are the other sources of CO2 emissions, and why can't the administration address those, blunting perhaps the criticisms from some people that this seems selective and aimed particularly at coal and coal-fired plants?
Well, the administration was a little tied up here. You have things like trucks and buses and other types of manufacturing that emit carbon. The administration had hoped early in the Obama years to get a proposal through Congress, a broad cap-and-trade proposal that would have allowed it to address everything, but the Republicans didn't want that. So they're left only with the Clean Air Act from 1970. That's kind of an antiquated act. That is aimed at power plants, so that's really all they could do here. They did as much as they could without congressional approval.
Mm-hmm. You know, another thing that I want to get your views on is that, critics say that these new rules will cost hundreds of thousands of jobs, that consumers are going to have to pay higher electricity bills, and that we can expect more power outages. Supporters say just the opposite, that actually the electricity costs are going to come down. It's going to increase energy efficiency. Who's right?
Well, I think you're comparing apples and oranges here, Susie. If your goal is to clean up the environment for future generations, then that's a goal. But that is going to be antithetical with the goal of creating jobs and keeping prices low. Because just by common sense, you're going to see coal producers have to retool, have to pay new taxes, have to use other energy sources, and that means they're going to have higher costs. And when you have higher costs, you hire fewer people, you don't use as much raw materials, and you raise prices. Now, that doesn't mean it's wrong. It means you have to choose between helping the economy and worrying about climate change. And I think trying to put one in terms of the other doesn't work. There's no reasonable answer to that question. Either side can differ, but you can't say that it's going to create jobs or lower costs. It seems to me it's obvious that it's going to have an adverse effect on the economy, but maybe that's worth it if you're worried about climate change.
Let's talk a little bit about the political implications of this move. Even some Democrats from coal-producing states, like Congressman Rahal from West Virginia, are very unhappy with this proposal. How big a political issue is this potentially in the midterm elections?
Well, it's like the Keystone Pipeline, Tyler. Again, the people from the senators running in Alaska and in Louisiana were not happy with putting off the Keystone Pipeline decision because they want it. They're in energy-producing states, and it makes their reelection more difficult. I think this has some of the same issues in West Virginia. We're probably going to see the senator from West Virginia switch from Democrat to Republican, and that doesn't help the case there. I think it makes it more complex, and I certainly think that they would have preferred, if this had to come out now, push off the date when comments could come through till after the election. Right now, we're supposed to wind this up before the election.
In a word or two, any chance this does become law?
Does it become law? There's going to be a lot of challenges. For instance, the Clean Air Act allows the administration to go power plant by power plant. It doesn't allow this kind of necessarily this statewide type of solution. So it's going to be a lot of challenges. Then you're going to have congressional challenges. Right. We don't know the end here yet. That's for sure.
All right, to be continued. Thank you so much, Andy.
Thanks for having me on.
Andrew Friedman at the Washington Update.
Take care.